The current situation began to intensify when military activity in the Middle East started increasing rapidly. Reports indicated that both the United States and Israel carried out coordinated strikes targeting several locations believed to be connected with Iran's military infrastructure and strategic programs. These operations were designed to weaken Iran's capabilities and send a strong signal that certain activities would not be tolerated. The strikes reportedly focused on facilities that were suspected of being involved in missile development, military logistics, and other sensitive operations. Following these attacks, tensions across the region rose almost immediately. Iran strongly condemned the strikes and described them as a serious violation of its sovereignty. Iranian officials warned that any military aggression would be met with a powerful response. Soon after, Iran launched retaliatory missile and drone attacks aimed at Israeli positions and locations believed to be linked with U.S. forces in the region. These responses demonstrated that the conflict was no longer limited to political statements or diplomatic warnings, but had entered a phase of direct military confrontation. As these exchanges continued, military movements in the region became more noticeable. Warships, fighter jets, and missile defense systems were repositioned as countries prepared for the possibility of further escalation. Israel increased its defense readiness, while the United States strengthened its military presence in nearby strategic locations to protect its interests and allies. Defense analysts began closely monitoring satellite imagery, troop deployments, and naval activity because such movements often signal preparation for larger operations. At the same time, the situation began attracting global attention because conflicts involving major military powers rarely remain isolated. International media outlets started reporting on the developments almost hourly, and governments around the world began assessing the potential risks. Some countries called for restraint and diplomacy, while others started evaluating how the situation could affect regional stability, security alliances, and international trade routes. The rapid sequence of attacks, responses, and military repositioning created a tense atmosphere across the Middle East. Each new development added another layer of uncertainty, making it increasingly difficult to predict how the situation might evolve in the coming days or weeks. Military analysts emphasize that when several powerful countries become involved in escalating actions at the same time, even a small incident or miscalculation can significantly increase the chances of further confrontation. Iran's response came quickly after the strikes carried out by the United States and Israel, signaling that Tehran was not willing to remain silent or appear weak in front of its regional rivals. Iranian leadership publicly condemned the attacks and described them as a direct act of aggression. Officials in Tehran warned that any country targeting Iranian territory or interests would face a powerful and immediate reaction. This statement was followed by military actions that demonstrated Iran's capability to respond across different fronts in the region. Reports began to emerge that Iran launched multiple missiles and drones toward targets connected to Israel and locations associated with U.S. military presence in the Middle East. These attacks were seen as a message that Iran possesses the ability to strike beyond its borders and challenge its adversaries directly. Iran has spent years developing its missile technology and drone capabilities, and this moment showed how those systems could be used in real conflict situations. Military experts noted that Iran's strategy often relies on a combination of direct responses and indirect pressure through regional networks. Another important aspect of Iran's retaliation involved the activation of allied groups and partners across the Middle East. Iran maintains relationships with several regional organizations that operate in different countries, and these groups can increase pressure on Israel and U.S. interests without Iran necessarily engaging in full-scale direct warfare. Because of this network, tensions in one area can quickly influence events in other parts of the region. Analysts believe this strategy allows Iran to expand the battlefield and create multiple points of pressure at the same time. As these developments unfolded, Israel began strengthening its missile defense systems and increasing its military readiness. Systems designed to intercept rockets and drones were placed on high alert, and Israeli forces continued monitoring incoming threats. The United States also increased defensive measures at its bases in the Middle East, deploying additional resources to protect troops and strategic facilities. These defensive preparations highlighted how seriously the situation was being taken by all sides involved. The exchange of strikes and counterstrikes created an atmosphere where every new attack raised the possibility of further retaliation. Military observers pointed out that once both sides begin responding to each other's actions, the situation can evolve into a cycle of escalation. Each side attempts to demonstrate strength, deter further attacks, and maintain its strategic position, which often leads to more aggressive responses and heightened tensions throughout the region. The tensions between Iran and Israel are not something that appeared suddenly in recent years. This rivalry has been developing for decades and is deeply connected to political ideology, regional influence, and security concerns. After the Iranian Revolution in 1979, Iran's new leadership adopted a strong stance against Israel and began supporting groups in the region that oppose Israeli policies. From that moment, relations between the two countries shifted from indirect rivalry to long-term hostility. Israel has consistently viewed Iran as one of its most serious strategic threats. One of the biggest concerns for Israeli leaders has been Iran's missile program and its nuclear ambitions. Israel believes that if Iran gains advanced military capabilities, it could threaten the balance of power in the Middle East. Because of these fears, Israel has repeatedly stated that it will take necessary steps to prevent Iran from developing weapons that could endanger Israeli security. This position has shaped Israel's military strategy and diplomatic actions for many years. On the other side, Iran argues that it is defending its sovereignty and regional position. Iranian officials often claim that their military and technological programs are meant for defensive purposes. They also accuse Israel and its allies of trying to isolate Iran politically and economically. Because of these competing narratives, both sides see themselves as reacting to threats rather than creating them. This difference in perspective has made diplomatic solutions extremely difficult to achieve. Over time, this rivalry has played out in several indirect ways rather than through open warfare. Intelligence operations, cyber attacks, and covert missions have been reported frequently in the past decade. There have been incidents involving suspected sabotage of military facilities, cyber intrusions targeting critical infrastructure, and accusations of secret operations carried out by intelligence agencies. These actions created a hidden conflict that has been unfolding behind the scenes for years. Another major factor in this rivalry is influence across the Middle East. Iran has built strong relationships with groups and political movements in several countries across the region. Through these alliances, Iran has expanded its strategic reach beyond its borders. Israel views this network as an attempt by Iran to surround it with hostile forces. Because of this, Israel closely monitors Iranian activities in neighboring countries and has taken actions aimed at limiting Iran's regional influence. As these tensions have continued over the years, each development has added another layer to the rivalry. Military planning, diplomatic pressure, intelligence operations, and regional alliances have all played roles in shaping this ongoing conflict. Analysts often describe the relationship between Iran and Israel as one of the most complex and dangerous rivalries in modern Middle Eastern politics, with both countries constantly watching each other's actions and preparing for possible escalation. One of the biggest concerns among global security experts is the possibility that the conflict could spread beyond the countries directly involved. The Middle East is a region where many alliances, rivalries, and political interests overlap, which means that when tensions rise between major powers, other actors can quickly become involved. If fighting between Iran and Israel continues to intensify, there is a strong chance that additional countries and groups could be drawn into the situation. turning a limited confrontation into a much wider, regional conflict. Iran has developed strong relationships with several groups and political movements across different parts of the Middle East. These allies often share similar political goals or strategic interests with Tehran, and they can influence events in countries such as Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Because of these connections, tensions between Iran and Israel do not remain confined to a single battlefield. Instead, pressure can appear in multiple locations at the same time, creating a complex security environment that is difficult to control. Israel, on the other hand, maintains strong security partnerships with the United States and has developed closer ties with several countries in the region over the past decade. These alliances are built on shared concerns about regional stability and security threats. If a major conflict were to break out, these partnerships could play an important role in shaping how different countries respond. Military cooperation, intelligence sharing, and joint defense strategies could quickly come into action if the situation escalates further. Another factor that increases the risk of regional expansion is the presence of military bases and strategic locations across the Middle East. The United States operates bases in several countries, and these facilities are considered critical for maintaining security operations in the region. If any of these locations were targeted during a conflict, it could pull additional nations directly into the confrontation. The involvement of more countries would significantly increase the scale and complexity of the crisis. The Middle East also contains several highly sensitive areas where tensions can rise quickly. Border regions, maritime routes, and contested territories often become flashpoints during periods of conflict. When military forces begin moving closer to these areas, even a small incident or misunderstanding can lead to rapid escalation. Defense analysts frequently warn that once multiple actors become involved in a conflict zone, controlling the pace of escalation becomes far more difficult, as different groups may pursue their own strategies and objectives at the same time. Another major concern connected to the rising tensions is the potential impact on the global economy. The Middle East is one of the most strategically important regions when it comes to energy resources, particularly oil and natural gas. Many countries around the world depend heavily on energy supplies that pass through this region, which means any instability or military conflict can quickly influence international markets and economic stability. When tensions increase between major powers in the Middle East, global investors and governments immediately start monitoring the situation closely, because even small disruptions can have widespread consequences. One of the most critical locations in this context is the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway serves as one of the most important energy transportation routes in the world. A significant portion of the world's oil shipments travels through this corridor every day, connecting major oil-producing countries in the Persian Gulf with global markets in Asia, Europe, and other regions. Because of its strategic importance, any military tension near this route immediately raises concerns about the security of international energy supplies. If a conflict involving Iran, Israel, and the United States were to intensify, the possibility of disruptions in maritime traffic would become a serious concern. Even the threat of attacks on oil tankers, naval confrontations, or restrictions on shipping lanes can cause energy prices to rise sharply. Global markets often react quickly to geopolitical tensions, and uncertainty alone can trigger fluctuations in oil prices. These price increases can affect transportation costs, manufacturing industries, and overall economic activity in many countries that rely on imported energy. Another factor that adds to these concerns is the presence of military forces and naval patrols in the surrounding waters. Several countries maintain naval operations in the region to protect shipping routes and ensure freedom of navigation. When military vessels from different nations operate in close proximity during a tense situation, the risk of accidental encounters or misunderstandings increases. Even a small maritime incident could escalate tensions further and create additional pressure on global trade routes. Because energy supply chains are interconnected with global financial systems, disruptions in the region can ripple across international markets. Stock markets, currency values, and commodity prices often respond rapidly to news about potential conflict in the Middle East. Governments and international organizations therefore pay close attention to developments in the region, as maintaining stability in key energy corridors remains a critical priority for the global economy. One of the biggest fears being discussed by political analysts and international observers is the possibility that the current tensions could grow into a much larger global conflict. When powerful nations become involved in a confrontation, the consequences rarely remain limited to a single region. The involvement of major military powers such as the United States, Israel, and Iran's immediately raises global concern because each of these countries holds significant military strength and strategic alliances that extend far beyond the Middle East. The fear of a wider war grows when military actions begin replacing diplomatic discussions. Airstrikes, missile launches, and military mobilization often create a cycle where each side responds to the other's actions with increased force. This pattern can quickly escalate tensions because every response is viewed as either retaliation or preparation for further attacks. In situations like this, even a single incident can shift the conflict to a much more dangerous level. Another reason why experts worry about escalation is the network of alliances connected to the countries involved. The United States maintains strong defense partnerships with several Western nations, while Israel is considered one of Washington's closest allies in the Middle East. If a major confrontation were to occur, these relationships could influence how other countries respond politically or militarily. At the same time, Iran has developed strategic partnerships and regional connections that could also play a role in shaping the direction of the conflict. Military technology also plays an important role in these concerns. Modern warfare involves advanced missile systems, drones, cyber capabilities, and highly sophisticated defense technologies. Because these systems can reach targets over long distances and respond rapidly, conflicts can escalate much faster than in the past. The speed of modern military operations leaves very little time for diplomatic intervention once fighting begins to intensify. Another factor contributing to global anxiety is the unpredictable nature of geopolitical crises. When multiple countries operate military forces in close proximity during a period of tension, the risk of misunderstandings or accidental clashes becomes higher. A misinterpreted radar signal, an unidentified aircraft, or an unexpected missile launch could trigger defensive responses that escalate the situation further. International organizations and world leaders are therefore paying close attention to the developments, urging restraint, and encouraging diplomatic engagement. The goal for many governments is to prevent the crisis from expanding beyond its current scope, because once a conflict involving several powerful nations grows larger, controlling its consequences becomes significantly more difficult.